This is a Ping driver from 2003, and this is what it looks like 20 years on, 2023's model. Today, we're going to see how far we've really come. So before we get into the silly season of driver releases, I wanted to do this fun test with these two drivers, Ping G430 and the Ping G2, which came out 20 years ago, to see how far we've really come. Before we get stuck into this video though, guys, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. It's totally free to do, and we release loads of videos like this every week. Also, leave me a comment. What driver were you using 20 years ago? So before we actually get into the hitting part of these and put these two drivers head to head, let's just talk about where technology has gone in the last 20 years, because actually when you stand and look at these drivers, when it's from above the ball, when you're addressing the golf ball, or even when you've got them in hand just like so, there's some drastic changes. Firstly, if we look at the Ping G2 driver, it was 460 cc's, which is the maximum head size that we can see. But from there, the way I would describe this driver now is that it looks almost like a package set driver or a basic driver. The reason for that being is that it lacks a few things that we see 20 years on down the line, which are pretty much standard in most drivers now. Number one is that it comes in a 10-degree head and it comes with a fixed hosel position. So there's no changeable sleeve in there, so you can add loft, you can take loft off, you can do one thing with the Ping ones as well, make them flat or upright. So whatever you're buying it, 10 degrees as we've got here, that is pretty much what you have got. You can't change it, that's what it's going to come as. The next noticeable thing as well, the movable weights around the head. Now, this driver, 460cc, like I say, the only real thing that I could find online was saying that it's a titanium head, it's got the large head, and it's forgiving because of the larger head. They were able to move weight on the inside of it, but that's about it. We don't see any plates or movable weights that you unscrew that we see now 20 years on. It just looks very, very basic. As we move forward now 20 years, quite a few things have changed. So a lot has changed as we move into this driver, the G430, which actually happens to be the driver I'm playing at the moment. Firstly, that movable neck. We see that you can take loft off, you can add loft onto it, and also there's the movable weight system at the back of the driver. So we have a fade port, we have a draw port, and we have that neutral port, something that, as we've seen through drivers as we've progressed over these 20 years, that has become pretty much a staple of every driver now, whether it's Callaway, Ping, TaylorMade, whoever it may be. We tend to see now that if it's at that higher end, there is that movable weight. There's also the look from when you look down on the driver as you're addressing the golf ball. One of the things that Ping came up with, I think about 10 years ago, was the turbulators. So those little ridges that we see on top of the driver almost look like fins or little teeth that are sticking out the top of the driver, and that is to help with the aerodynamics of the driver, help it glide through the air a bit quicker and generate a bit more clubhead speed. Also, you see this sort of dragonfly structure on top where they've again use the construction of the driver to help position weights around the perimeters, around different parts of the driver to help you with the forgiveness. So that's technology, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more and more come into the heads. Will we see even more as we get into the new releases? That is yet to be seen. But how has that 20 years of technology helped improve the stats that we're going to see? So here's how it's going to work. To try and make it a little bit fairer, we're going to alternate between each driver. So I'm going to do 3 sets of 3 and then finish off with 1 shot with both of them to get 10 shots for each driver. I'll be doing a little T-flip in a second to decide who goes first. Both drivers are set to 10 degrees. Obviously the G2 from 2003 cannot be moved, as where the G430 from 2023 can be moved, so I've been able to change the setting to a 10 degree and lock that in. Slightly different shafts in both. They are both X-Flexes. In this one we've got the Grapholoy Blue Pro Launch, and then in this one we've got the Ventus TR Blue, like I say, both X-Flexes. And the ball that will be being used is the Pro V1 in this. So let's see how we go. We're looking at distance, carry, and we're looking at dispersion. I want to see, has 20 years of technology actually improved me from a driver that I used to have and I used to love. The G2 up first then, 3 balls, switch over, 3 balls. Let's see how we go. I don't think it's going to be too far away. I reckon dispersion might even be better with this, you know. Just feel like I remember it being a slightly spinny driver when I had it. Excited, it's bringing back old memories. It's for how battered this driver is, it actually looks still half decent. Oh, that's a bit necky. Oh, that felt good. That felt good. Tell you what, throw a blanket over those 3 onto the G430. Guess that's the beauty of it, I've nearly missed that. Three with my G430. Probably I hit the G2 better then, but let's keep going. We're going to hit 2 more sets of each 3 now. That was G430. Whee, that's so straight. So where has 20 years of driver technology led us to? Before we find out, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out any of the future driver reviews we have coming over the incoming weeks. Interesting, really. I actually almost felt that I enjoyed hitting the G2 driver more. It felt a little bit more stable. It felt nice. I think it might have just been nostalgia, to be honest with you, because I really enjoyed my driver, my G2, when I did have it about 18 years ago. But when we dive into the numbers, it makes for some interesting reading. Firstly, obviously one of the things that I talked about was club head speed earlier, and the turbulators being put on there to help with the aerodynamics of the golf club. The club head speed was identical on both of them. So nothing in terms of aerodynamics going massively into the G2 head compared to what the G430 has, and we see that they are identical, so interesting. The biggest thing though, like I said, was distance and dispersion. Where have we got to? Where have we got to in 20 years? Well, as expected, distance is better with the G430. We actually see that it's 272 yards of carry versus 261 yards of carry with the G2. So 11 yards, I would say I probably hit spells of this worse than I hit spells of that, and then I hit probably my best ones with the G430. So interesting there to see that there's that difference, but 11 yards is pretty much a club. So when you're out on the golf course, going in with maybe, you know, a 6-iron as opposed to a 7-iron into a par 4 would lead to probably higher scores overall over the course of a season. But then when we talk about dispersion, interestingly, the G2 was better. I had tighter dispersion with the G2, and the reason for that being is that the launch angle was higher. We saw it coming in at 14.9 versus 11.9 with the G430, but then the spin was different, 3,557 of revs versus 2,960, so quite significantly different there. Ideally, we'd want to see it spinning round about that 250 number, 2,500, so my G430 a little bit high, probably because of the Healy low strikes. But when you are getting a lot of spin, one thing that will happen is that the ball will straighten out. So we saw that with the G2, and then thus that led to it being the straighter one of the 2 drivers. So overall, interesting to see where they've come. I'll be interesting to see what is coming. So make sure you stay tuned for that and don't miss any of the reviews that we have coming out early next year.